I was standing in front of my parents' mansion at 2 a.m., my 4-month-old son, Noah, limp in my arms, his lips turning blue, and my father slammed the door in my face. The automated lock clicked with a sound that still echoes in my nightmares. The porch light went dark, leaving us in the howling blizzard. That was the moment I stopped being their daughter and became something they would learn to fear. But before I tell you how I burned their entire world to the ground, I need you to do something for me. If this story makes your blood boil the way mine did that night, hit that like button. Subscribe because you need to hear what happened next. And comment below if you've ever had family treat you like you were worth less than the dirt on their designer shoes. Trust me, you're going to want to follow this journey. Now let me take you back to where it all started, because you need to understand just how deep their cruelty ran. I grew up in that mansion on Riverside Drive, the kind of house that screams old money and cold hearts. My parents, Richard and Linda Morrison, were the type of people who measured worth in dollar signs and social status. My father owned a commercial real estate empire. My mother spent her days at country club luncheons and charity galas where she'd smile for cameras while whispering venom about everyone the moment they turned away. I was their firstborn, and for a brief, naive period of my childhood, I thought that meant something. Then Ashley was born when I was 7, and I learned what it meant to be invisible. She was the golden child from day one, blessed with my mother's delicate features and an instinct for manipulation that would have impressed a con artist. Whatever Ashley wanted, Ashley got. Dance lessons, designer clothes, a car for her 16th birthday that cost more than most people's houses. Meanwhile, I got hand-me-downs and lectures about being grateful. I told myself it was fine. I threw myself into my studies, graduated top of my class, got into a decent college. I thought if I just worked hard enough, proved myself enough, they'd finally see me. God, I was so stupid. My father paid for Ashley's sorority dues and spring break trips to Cabo, but when I asked for help with textbooks, he told me I needed to learn the value of money. I worked 3 part-time jobs through college, while watching my sister post Instagram stories from Paris Fashion Week. After graduation, I met James at a coffee shop. He was charming, attentive, everything my family wasn't. We got married within a year, and for a moment I thought I'd found my escape. My parents didn't come to the wedding. They said they had a prior commitment, a golf tournament. Ashley sent me a text that said, "Sorry, but like courthouse weddings are super depressing anyway." The marriage fell apart within 2 years. James had secrets, debts, and a gambling problem he'd hidden well. When I found out I was pregnant, he was already gone, leaving me with an eviction notice and emptied bank accounts. I had nowhere to turn except back to the people who'd spent my entire life teaching me I was worthless. I swallowed my pride and called my mother. I explained everything, my voice breaking, begging for just temporary help until I could get back on my feet. She listened in silence, then said, "Well, Sarah, perhaps this will teach you to make better choices. Your father and I didn't raise you to be this irresponsible." Then she hung up. I had Noah in a county hospital alone. No flowers, no visitors, no congratulations cards. I named him after my grandmother, my father's mother, the only person in that family who'd ever shown me genuine love. She'd passed away when I was 15, but I remembered her kindness, her warm hugs that smelled like lavender and vanilla. She'd promised me once that she'd make sure I was taken care of. At the time, I'd thought she meant emotionally. The months after Noah's birth were a blur of survival. I worked customer service from home, barely making enough to cover rent and diapers. I applied for assistance programs, swallowed my pride at the welfare office, and learned what it really meant to be hungry. I'd stare at my phone sometimes, looking at my parents' social media. My father posted photos from his new yacht. My mother shared pictures from her kitchen renovation that cost more than I'd earn in 5 years. Ashley's engagement announcement went viral, her influencer fiancé showering her with roses and a ring that could have fed Noah and me for a year. I told myself I didn't need them. I told myself I was building something real, something honest, even if it was hard. Then winter came early, vicious and unforgiving. My landlord, a man who'd already given me 2 extensions, finally ran out of patience. The eviction was legal, justified, and completely devastating. It was November the 15th, a Tuesday, when the marshal knocked on my door. I had 72 hours to vacate. I called everyone I knew, every friend from college, every distant relative. Nobody had room for a struggling single mother and a baby. Nobody wanted the burden. By Friday evening, I was packing our meagre belongings into trash bags, Noah crying in his carrier, my hands shaking so badly I could barely tie the knots. The temperature had dropped to 15 degrees. The news warned of a historic blizzard rolling in from Canada. I had $300 in my account, no car and nowhere to go. I stood in that empty apartment, looking at my phone, at my mother's contact information. Every instinct screamed at me not to call. But Noah had a cough, a wet rattle in his tiny chest that terrified me. I couldn't let my pride kill my son. I called. My mother answered on the fourth ring, her voice bright and cheerful. "Sarah, this is unexpected. We're just sitting down to dinner. Is this important?" I explained everything as quickly as I could. The eviction, the cold, Noah's cough. I promised it would only be for a few days, just until I could figure something out. I'd sleep on the floor. I wouldn't be any trouble, please, Mum, please. There was a long pause. Then I heard my father's voice in the background. "Is that Sarah Teller? We're busy." My mother sighed, that particular sigh she'd perfected over the years, the one that made you feel like you were an inconvenience just for existing. "Sarah, honey, you're an adult now. You made your choices. Your father and I can't be expected to bail you out every time you make a mistake. It's time you learnt to stand on your own 2 feet. I tried to argue. I reminded her I'd never asked them for anything, not once in my adult life. I begged. I actually begged, my voice cracking, tears streaming down my face while Noah wailed in the background. "Please, just for tonight. The temperature is supposed to drop below 0. Noah is sick. I'm not asking for money, just a warm place to sleep." My mother's voice turned cold. "Sarah, the answer is no. You need to figure this out yourself. That's what being an adult means. Now I really must go. Our dinner is getting cold." She hung up. I sat there on the floor of that empty apartment, staring at my phone, Noah screaming himself hoarse, and something inside me just shattered. But I didn't have time to fall apart. I bundled Noah in every piece of clothing I could layer on his tiny body, wrapped him in 2 blankets, put him in the carrier against my chest, and walked out into the night. The shelter was full. Every church I tried had their capacity maxed. The temperature kept dropping, the wind picking up, carrying the first wet snowflakes of the blizzard. Noah's cough was getting worse, his little body hot with fever against my chest. I was terrified, more terrified than I'd ever been in my life. I made a decision that I knew was dangerous, that I knew was probably stupid, but I was out of options. I took the bus as far as it would go, then walked the last 1.5 miles to Riverside Drive to my parents' house. Every step through the deepening snow felt like walking to my own execution. I knew how they'd react. I knew they didn't want me there. But I also knew they had 7 bedrooms, 3 fireplaces, and enough space to house Noah and me without even noticing we existed. I got there just after midnight. The house was lit up like Christmas, every window glowing warm and golden. I could see the flicker of the television in the living room shadows moving behind the curtains. I stood at the door, Noah barely moving in my arms, now his cries reduced to weak whimpers. I knocked soft at first, then harder when nobody answered. After what felt like hours, but was probably only a few minutes, the door opened. My father stood there in his cashmere robe, a crystal tumbler of expensive scotch in his hand, looking at me like I was a door-to-door salesman interrupting his evening. "Sarah," he said flatly, "what are you doing here?" I tried to explain, but the words came out in a jumbled rush. "The eviction, the cold Noah's fever. Please, Dad, please, just let us in for tonight. I'll leave first thing in the morning. You won't even know we're here." He stood there, his face expressionless, one hand on the doorframe physically blocking my entry. "I told your mother to tell you we couldn't help. You should have made better arrangements," he said, his voice as cold as the wind cutting through my inadequate coat. Noah let out a weak cry, and I pulled back the blanket so my father could see his grandson's face, pale and sweating, despite the freezing temperature. "Dad, please, he's burning up. I just need to get him warm. Please." I was crying now, not caring about dignity anymore, just desperate. That's when my mother appeared behind him, wrapped in a silk robe that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe. She looked at me at Noah, and I saw something flicker across her face. Not sympathy. Irritation. Sarah, this is completely inappropriate. You can't just show up here in the middle of the night expecting us to solve your problems. I tried to push forward to get inside, but my father's arm shot out, blocking me. You need to leave, he said firmly. It's below zero, I screamed, my voice cracking. My baby is sick. What kind of people are you? My mother's face hardened. The kind who taught you to be self-sufficient. Clearly those lessons didn't take. Maybe a night in the cold will help you learn some responsibility. Children need tough love sometimes, Sarah. Perhaps Noah needs it too. Builds character. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I looked past them into the house, saw Ashley coming down the stairs in designer pyjamas, her phone out recording. She was actually filming this. Oh my God, she said, her voice dripping with mock sympathy. Guys, look at this. This is what happens when you don't listen to your parents. Super sad. Something in me snapped. I tried to force my way inside, desperate, not thinking clearly. My father's hand shot out and shoved me hard. I stumbled backward, nearly fell down the porch steps, barely managing to keep my balance and protect Noah. The door slammed shut with a finality that felt like a death sentence. I heard the electronic lock engage with that terrible click. Then the porch light went dark, leaving us in sudden complete darkness as the snow fell harder. I stood there for maybe 30 seconds in shock, unable to process what had just happened. Then Noah made a sound, a weak, gasping sound that terrified me down to my bones. I ran. I don't know how I did it, carrying him through snow that was already ankle deep, but I ran. The fire station was 2 miles away, and I ran the entire distance, slipping, falling, getting back up my lungs, burning my legs, screaming, but I ran. The firefighters saved his life. They called an ambulance, got him on oxygen, wrapped him in heated blankets. The paramedics said another hour, and we would have lost him to hypothermia and pneumonia. They asked what happened. I lied. I said I'd gotten lost in the storm, that I'd been trying to walk to a friend's house and got turned around. One of them looked at me with knowing eyes, saw through the lie, but he didn't push. The police came anyway. Standard procedure for a child endangerment case. I stuck to my story. I couldn't tell the truth because I knew my father's reach, knew he played golf with the police chief, knew that somehow, someway, he'd twist this to be my fault. When they asked if I had anywhere to go, I said I had a friend coming. Another lie. I called Mike from the hospital room where Noah was sleeping, finally stable, finally warm. Mike Reeves, my former study partner from college, the one person who'd stayed in touch even after I'd disappeared into my failed marriage and single motherhood. I hadn't talked to him in over a year, and my hands shook as I dialed his number at 3 a.m. He answered on the second ring, his voice rough with sleep. "Sarah, what's wrong?" I broke down. Everything I'd been holding together, all the fear and exhaustion and rage, it all came pouring out. I told him everything, not just about that night, but about my entire life, about every wound my family had ever inflicted. He listened without interrupting, and when I finally ran out of words, he said 4 words that changed everything. "I'm coming to you." Mike arrived at dawn unshaven in sweatpants with a duffel bag and a fierce determination in his eyes. He was a paralegal now, working at a law firm downtown, and he'd brought his work laptop. "We're going to fix this," he said, and I wanted to believe him, but I was so tired, so broken. "Sarah, I need you to trust me, but first I need information." We spent the morning in the hospital cafeteria while Noah slept upstairs, Mike typing frantically while I tried to remember every detail about my family's finances that I'd ever overheard. He started by pulling my credit report standard procedure for helping me find a rental. What he found made him go completely still. He turned the laptop toward me, his face pale. "Sarah, did you ever co-sign anything for your father?" I shook my head, confused. "No, why would I? He's loaded." Mike's jaw tightened. "Because according to this, you're listed as a co-signer on a $5 million loan taken out 3 years ago. The collateral is their house, but the money went to purchase a yacht and establish an offshore account. Sarah, this is textbook money laundering and fraud." My stomach dropped and the room started spinning. "What, no? That can't be right. I would never sign something like that." "No, you didn't," Mike said grimly. "But someone forged your signature. And there's more. You remember your grandmother? She left you a trust fund, $200,000 supposed to be released to you when you turned 25. Sarah, you're 27 now. Did you ever receive anything?" My mind reeled. I'd forgotten about that, completely assumed it had been spent or didn't exist. "No, I thought maybe it was just something she'd talked about, but never actually set up. Mike's fingers flew across the keyboard. It took him 2 hours making calls, accessing public records, using contacts at his firm. When he finally turned back to me, his expression was a mixture of fury and something that looked almost like awe. "Sarah, your father liquidated that trust fund 6 years ago, forged documents claiming you'd given him power of attorney. The money went into their personal accounts. Combined with the loan fraud, we're looking at multiple felonies, financial elder abuse, identity theft, bank fraud, and possibly tax evasion." I stared at him, unable to process it. "What does this mean?" Mike's smile was cold, predatory. "It means that in America, white-collar crime, especially fraud, that involves federal banking institutions, carries heavier sentences than many violent crimes. Your parents don't just owe you money, Sarah. They've committed crimes that could put them in federal prison for a decade or more, and you have the nuclear button." Something shifted in me then. All my life I'd been taught that I was the problem, that I was never enough, that I should be grateful for scraps. They'd taken everything from me, my childhood, my confidence, my inheritance, and finally, almost my son's life. And they'd done it with smiles on their faces, convinced of their own righteousness. I thought about Noah lying in that hospital bed because my own parents had left him to freeze. I thought about Ashley recording my humiliation for her social media. I thought about my mother's voice saying maybe my baby needed tough love. "What do I need to do?" I asked, my voice steady for the first time in years. Mike leaned forward. "First we go to the FBI, Financial Crimes Division, then we contact the bank that issued the loan, then we activate identity theft protocols which will freeze everything associated with your name or signature until the investigation is complete. Sarah, you need to understand something. Once we start this, there's no going back. Your parents' entire financial world will collapse. Are you sure?" I thought about my father's hand on my chest, shoving me into the snow. I thought about my mother's cold dismissal of her sick grandson. I thought about Ashley's mocking video. "I'm sure," I said. "Burn it all down." The next morning, while Noah was being discharged from the hospital, Mike and I walked into the FBI field office downtown. We had copies of everything: the forged signatures, the trust fund documents, the loan papers, my credit report, even the hospital records from Noah's hypothermia treatment, and a statement from the firefighters who'd found us. The agent who took our case, a sharp-eyed woman named Martinez, listened to everything, her expression growing darker with each detail. "Ms. Morrison," she said when I finished, "I want you to understand what's going to happen. The moment we activate the fraud investigation, all accounts associated with these documents will be frozen. This includes your parents' personal accounts, credit cards, everything. They won't be able to access any funds until the investigation concludes. This is not a fast process. We're talking weeks, possibly months." "Good," I said, and I meant it. Agent Martinez made a phone call, then another. Within 3 hours it was done. Somewhere across the city in their warm mansion, my parents' perfect life was starting to crumble, and they didn't even know it yet. They found out the next evening. It was a Saturday, the night of their annual charity auction, the event my mother spent months planning, her crown jewel of social positioning. Mike had helped me set up a studio apartment in a building he partially owned, nothing fancy but warm and safe. We'd just gotten Noah settled when my phone rang. "Ashley." I let it go to voicemail. She called again and again. Then my mother, then my father. 12 missed calls in 20 minutes. Finally, I answered my mother's 13th call. "What did you do?" she screamed, her voice so loud I had to hold the phone away from my ear. "Our cards aren't working." The bank froze everything. The FBI came to the house. "Sarah, you fix this right now." I put the phone on speaker so Mike could hear. "Mum," I said calmly, "I didn't do anything. I just reported a crime. Turns out, using your daughter's identity to commit fraud is illegal. Who knew?" My father grabbed the phone. "You ungrateful little bitch! After everything we've done for you. We gave you life. We raised you." His voice was apoplectic, spittle-flying rage that I'd heard directed at business rivals, but never at me. It was oddly liberating. "You gave me nothing," I said, my voice flat. "You stole from me. You forged my signature. You committed multiple felonies using my identity. But hey, at least you'll have plenty of time to think about what you did for me. Federal prison sentences for bank fraud start at about 10 years. There was a shocked silence. Then my mother's voice, smaller now, calculating. Sarah, sweetie, there's been a misunderstanding. We can explain everything. Just come over, we'll talk about this like a family. We're not a family, I said. We never were. Oh, and Mum, I called the power company too. Asked them to disconnect service at your address due to suspected fraud. Should be going dark right about now. Weather forecast says another cold front tonight. Maybe you'll learn some responsibility. Builds character. I hung up. Mike was staring at me with something like respect. Damn, he said. Remind me never to cross you. But I wasn't done, not even close. The next morning, I filed formal complaints with both the State Attorney General and the IRS. Mike helped me draft the documents meticulously detailed, highlighting every discrepancy, every forged signature, every suspicious transfer. The IRS, it turns out, takes a very dim view of offshore accounts established with fraudulent loans. They opened their own investigation within 48 hours. By Monday afternoon, federal agents had seized my parents' yacht. By Tuesday, the bank had begun foreclosure proceedings on the house. By Wednesday, Ashley's credit cards, all of which were tied to my father's accounts as an authorised user, were declined at a restaurant where she was filming a sponsored post. The video of her screaming at the waiter when her card got rejected went viral for all the wrong reasons. Her sponsors started dropping her. My father tried to fight back. He hired the best lawyers money could buy, except he couldn't pay them because his accounts were frozen. He tried to leverage his connections, call in favours, but funny thing about rich people, they scatter like roaches when the FBI starts asking questions about money laundering. The police chief he played golf with suddenly didn't return his calls, his country club buddies too busy to meet. 2 weeks after I'd walked into the FBI office, my parents showed up at my apartment. They'd taken a taxi, and according to the driver who told Mike later, they'd tried to skip out on the fare. They looked diminished somehow, my father's usually perfect hair dishevelled, my mother's designer outfit wrinkled and days old. Ashley was with them, her phone clutched in her hand like a lifeline, her eyes red from crying. They knocked. I didn't answer. They knocked again, harder. "Sarah, we know you're in there! Open this door!" my father shouted. I looked through the peephole, saw them huddled in my narrow hallway, and felt nothing. No satisfaction, no guilt, just a vast emptiness where they used to live in my head. Mike, who'd been staying on my couch to help with Noah and provide moral support, stood up. "Want me to handle it?" I shook my head. "No, I've got this." I opened the door, but kept the chain lock engaged. My father immediately tried to push inside, his old reflexes kicking in, but the chain held. Mike appeared behind me, his 6'3" frame filling the space. "Touch this door again and I'm calling the police for attempted home invasion," Mike said calmly. My mother's face crumpled in a way I'd never seen before. She was actually crying, mascara running down her cheeks, her hands clasped in front of her like she was praying. "Sarah, please, we made mistakes. We're sorry. You can't do this to us. Ashley can't even afford her apartment anymore. We're going to lose everything. Think about family. Think about blood." "Blood," I repeated the word, tasting bitter. "You left my blood, your grandson, to freeze to death on your porch. You filmed it. You mocked him." Ashley flinched, tried to hide behind our mother. "That was just content," she mumbled. "I deleted it." "No, you didn't," I said. "I have copies. The FBI has copies. And speaking of content, let me show you something." I pulled out my tablet, the one Mike had helped me recover from my parents' cloud storage system before they'd changed all their passwords. Their smart home system had cameras everywhere, including the front porch. I downloaded everything from that night. I played the video, my father shoving me, my mother's voice saying, "Let him freeze, it builds character," Ashley laughing, saying, "This is great content." I watched my parents' faces as they really saw themselves, maybe for the first time. The colour drained from my father's face. "Where did you get that?" he whispered. "Your own security system," I said. Turns out when you put your daughter's name on your accounts, she has access to your passwords. I've sent copies to the FBI, the state prosecutor, and my lawyer. That video, by the way, shows clear evidence of child endangerment and felony assault. The DA is very interested. My mother collapsed into sobs, actual body-racking sobs that might have moved me a year ago. Now I just watched detached. "We didn't mean it," she choked out. "We were drunk. We weren't thinking clearly. Sarah, please, you're our daughter. Family forgives." "Family protects," I said quietly. "Family keeps each other safe. Family doesn't forge signatures and steal inheritances. Family doesn't leave babies to die in blizzards." I paused, let that sink in. "You taught me that the world is cold and merciless. You taught me that only the strong survive. You taught me that family is just a word people use when they want something. Thank you for those lessons. I learnt them well." Ashley pushed forward, her voice desperate. "Sarah, come on. We're sisters. Remember when we were kids? I'll do anything. I'll apologise publicly. I'll tell everyone I was wrong. Just please make this stop." I looked at her, really looked at her, saw the fear behind the desperation. "Do you remember what you said to me at Mum's birthday party last year when I asked if you could loan me $50 for groceries?" Ashley's face went white. She remembered. "You said, and I quote, 'Maybe if you weren't such a loser you wouldn't be broke. Not my problem.'" I let that hang in the air. Well, guess what, Ashley? This isn't my problem. My father's mask finally cracked completely. "You vindictive little bitch. I should have drowned you when you were born. You were always useless, always pathetic. This is who you really are. Cruel, heartless." And there it was. The truth he'd always felt, but usually had the sense to hide. "Yeah," I said softly. "I'm heartless. I wonder where I learnt that." I looked at Mike. "Call building security. Tell them we have unwanted visitors harassing a tenant." "Sarah, no," my mother screamed. "Please, at least let us see Noah. We're his grandparents." I laughed a sound without humour. "You left him to die. You don't get to call yourselves his grandparents. You're nothing to him. You're nothing to me. Get out." Security arrived 3 minutes later. My parents were escorted out, my mother wailing, my father threatening lawsuits. He had no money to file, Ashley recording everything on her phone in some desperate attempt to salvage her dying social media career. I closed the door, locked it, and leaned against the wood. I was shaking, but not from fear, from release. Over the following weeks, I watched my family's empire crumble. With a detachment that probably should have worried me, but didn't. The house went to auction. Some tech billionaire bought it for pennies on the dollar. My father was indicted on 17 counts of fraud, identity theft, and money laundering. His lawyer negotiated a plea deal, 12 years in federal prison. He took it because the alternative was 25. The investigation into the trust fund revealed that my mother had been the one to actually forge my signature, probably because her handwriting was closer to mine. She was charged as an accomplice, 8 years. Ashley wasn't charged criminally, but the civil lawsuit I filed for emotional distress, and her role in the endangerment of Noah was settled out of what little she had left. She lost her apartment, her car, her wardrobe. Last I heard, she was working at a fast food place in Jersey, her social media accounts deleted after the harassment became too much. The trust fund, after being frozen during the investigation, was returned to me with interest, $240,000. Add that to the restitution ordered by the court, and I suddenly had more money than I'd ever imagined. Mike helped me invest it wisely, set up proper accounts for Noah's future, and for the first time in my life, I could breathe without the weight of poverty crushing my chest. But the money wasn't the victory. The victory was in the mirror every morning, seeing someone who'd stopped apologising for existing. The victory was in the way I held my head up in the grocery store, not hunched and afraid. The victory was in my son's laugh, free and joyful, never knowing the people who'd tried to kill him existed. 6 months after that night in the snow, I was walking through Central Park with Noah in his stroller. It was June, warm and golden, the kind of day that makes you believe the world might actually be good. We passed a woman handing out flyers for a food bank. She looked tired, worn down her clothes, shabby but clean. It took me a moment to recognise her. Linda Morrison, my mother. She saw me at the same moment. Her eyes widened and I watched her make the calculation. Would I stop? Would I gloat? Would I feel anything at all? She took a step toward me, one hand reaching out. "Sarah," she said, her voice cracking. "Sarah, please." I looked at her, really looked at her, saw the grey in her unwashed hair, the lines carved deep around her mouth, the defeat in her eyes. I felt Noah shift in his stroller, making happy baby sounds at a passing dog. I thought about who I used to be, that girl who would have stopped, who would have felt guilty, who would have helped despite everything. That girl died in a blizzard 6 months ago. I put my sunglasses back on, turned to Noah and smiled. "Come on, baby, let's go home." I pushed the stroller forward, walked right past her like she was invisible, like she was nothing. Because to me, to Noah, to the life we were building, she was... I heard her call my name again, heard the desperation and pain in her voice. I didn't look back. Behind me, somewhere in the distance, she was crying. I kept walking toward the sunshine, toward the ice cream vendor, where I'd promised Noah a treat, toward a future that was finally completely ours. They taught me that the world was cold. They taught me that only the strong survive. They taught me that family was just a word people used to manipulate you. They were right about all of it. And when I finally learnt those lessons, when I finally became what they'd spent years creating, they realised too late that they'd armed their own destroyer. Noah will grow up never knowing his biological grandparents exist. He'll know his grandmother was a kind woman who left him a legacy. He'll know his mother fought to keep him safe. He'll know that sometimes the people who are supposed to love you will hurt you the worst, and that it's okay to walk away from poison, even when it shares your DNA. He'll know that forgiveness is not owed to people who never apologised, and that moving on doesn't mean forgetting. As for me, I sleep better now than I ever did. No more nightmares about not being good enough. No more anxiety about missing calls from family members who only wanted something. No more guilt about putting myself first. I protected my child. I held people accountable for their crimes. I took back what was stolen from me. And if that makes me cold, if that makes me heartless, if that makes me the villain in their story, then so be it. I'd rather be the villain in their narrative than the victim in my own. The world taught me to be ice, so I became the blizzard that buried them all. Now, I want to know, have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and your own survival? Have you ever been pushed so far that you stopped recognising yourself in the mirror? How far would you go to protect your child from people who were supposed to love them? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. This story needs to be heard, because too many people are still standing in the cold waiting for doors that will never open. Hit that like button if you believe sometimes the only way out is through the fire. Subscribe because I've got more stories about fighting back, about choosing yourself, about refusing to be a victim anymore. And share this because someone in your life needs to hear that it's okay to walk away from people who are drowning you, even if they're family. Remember, the opposite of love isn't hate, it's indifference. And I learnt to be spectacularly indifferent to people who were never really there in the first place.